My manipulative fiancé cheated on me, so I got an abortion behind his back. He convinced me to take him back, and that was the worst mistake of my entire life. My fiancé Chase has always wanted to be a father, and around half a year ago he finally managed to manipulate me into trying for a child. I say manipulated because he knew I wanted to be child-free, but still brainwashed me into believing that my sole purpose is to bear children. But this isn't why I got the abortion. You see, I was terrified of being a mother, so when I became pregnant, I turned to my fiancé for help a lot. I'd cry and call him while he was at work, begging him to tell me everything would be okay. My hormones were going AWOL, and I took it out on him, sometimes yelling or nagging him more than I should have, and I guess it got too much for him. He started distancing himself, then he began working late, and eventually I found out that he had an affair partner named Stacy. Learning that my fiancé was cheating on me while I was pregnant was the most emotional pain I have ever felt. I was only 2 months in at the time, so the next morning I drove to the hospital and got the procedure done. When I got back home, Chase greeted me at the door. I looked at him with a lot of anger in my eyes. I really couldn't suppress it. I asked him who Stacy was, and I saw him look at me like a deer in headlights. It took him a minute to get his words out, but he said it was his cousin. He then accused me of going through his phone again. You see, earlier in our relationship, I caught Chase still using online dating apps and told him to delete them. He explained that it didn't matter if he still had an account because he said he was only dating me at the moment. I let it slide for a couple of months until I found him texting a girl that he matched with. He wasn't cheating on me with her, and the conversation didn't cross any boundaries, but I felt that he shouldn't text her because of the principle. We got into a big argument over me not trusting him, how I shouldn't have been snooping, and how I hurt my own feelings by being nosy. We went to couples counseling after that, and over the past few years, our relationship got better, but now the signs of infidelity were popping back up again. He sounded exactly like he did years ago, saying how I needed to stay out of his phone and how I was interfering with his privacy. I asked him why he got me pregnant and if he knew he wasn't ready to be with only me. He replied with how stressed out he'd been at work and how the pressure of the relationship made him turn to his cousin Stacy. I took a deep breath and told him that I was no longer pregnant, and he went mad. He called me every name in the book. He said I was a backstabber, a slut, you name it. He said that I knew how happy he was to be a father, and I ruined that for him. I told him that the trust I had in him was ruined, but he didn't seem to care. He said, well, at least I didn't get rid of our kid. He said he felt betrayed, and I told him welcome to the party. He said he was leaving. I told him to stay. Despite the infidelity, I knew that I still loved him, and I felt that he loved me too, but he was already out the door. The next few days, while scrolling through social media, I saw his family posting rude things about me. They called me every name that he had called me the week before. They had the story all mixed up. They said that I aborted our baby because I just didn't want to be a mother and wanted to sleep around with guys before I officially got married. They painted me as the person who had an affair. Some harassed me online and on my phone. I got cruel messages from numbers I'd never seen before. I felt like the world was ending. I felt so misheard and abused. About a week later, I got a call from Chase saying he broke things off with Stacy and that he wanted to continue planning for our wedding. He told me that those days were behind him and apologized for his family's actions. He asked them to remove the posts they made about me, and they eventually did. He also apologized for the name-calling and for freaking out about the baby. He said he understood why I did it and that was no longer a concern for me now. I was happy to hear from him again, and since he said those days were behind him, I believed him. I did think about it a lot, and in hindsight, it's very easy to spot that I was an idiot for this, but I really fell for his tricks again. We moved back in together the following week, and things were finally going back to normal. Then it started again. Every time we had a fight, he would bring up the abortion again and storm out of the house for a few days. Then his family would begin the cyberbullying again. He would come home and apologize, and the cycle would repeat again and again. I kept forgiving him. I felt stupid for doing so, but I was in love. Every time I would try to live my life without him and tell myself I was done for good. I would remember the times that we would share on the beach when we would talk for hours on end. The intimate conversations and the good memories of our relationship made me feel like I was losing something that was good for me. Every time I would convince myself that things would get just as good as they were in the beginning of our relationship and that this was just a rough patch. I told myself that he only had eyes for me and tried not to let the cheating affect our relationship. I started to try to do more for him to keep him home so his eyes wouldn't want to wander. Each time he left, my family breathed a sigh of relief because they were constantly telling me to leave. My mom said that it would be easy to leave since we weren't married and we didn't have kids with each other, and I agreed with her. It would be easy, but I didn't think that I would feel fulfilled in any other relationship like I did with Chase. After another argument, I was sure that I was done with Chase. He had crossed the line this time, getting my family involved and having his family post about me and about my parents. But before I could try to get over him, Chase came back asking for another chance and planned an elaborate getaway together. I told him no, but it was to our favorite vacation spot. We had gone there early in our relationship when we were still in the honeymoon stage. I thought to myself that this could be the spark that was missing from our relationship. This is the reason we were going into a perpetuating cycle of arguing and leaving. It was because we didn't vacation enough, and this was our chance at a perfect relationship again. I agreed and hugged him. He took me to this beautiful resort on the beach for the weekend. We ate and drank and enjoyed every minute with each other. He loved me then, like he had never loved on me before. I fell even more in love with him, and I didn't know that existed. He talked to me about how sorry he was, how much he'd taken me for granted, and that this time would be different. I believed him and laid with him in the sand, watching the sunset. When we got home, it felt bittersweet. I finally got the relationship I wanted, but I didn't want to leave the resort. It felt amazing with it just being me and him. No family telling us to break up or any other people for him to focus on but me. A couple of weeks went by, and we had another argument, this time about milk. He said I should have bought the 2% instead of getting almond milk. He blew up. He told me that I couldn't do anything right, and he should have known that I didn't listen because of how I aborted our baby. He brought up the baby in every argument. He made me believe that he had changed and that he'd forgiven me. He would tell me sweet little little nothings all the time so that he could get back in my good graces, and I was beginning to get tired of it. Our wedding was in less than 6 months, and I wondered if I could be with someone who could hold a grudge against me for the rest of my life. I also wondered if he wouldn't hold it against me anymore if I got pregnant again. Whichever way it went, I just wanted my Chase back. He did his usual storm out and left for a few days. Those few days actually began to feel more peaceful. I didn't feel as trapped as I did before in our relationship. I didn't feel as insecure in myself when he wasn't around. I didn't feel like I was on edge when I went out or wondered where he was or if he was with another girl. I went to work and went home each day, and that life that I thought was boring became the peace that I needed. This was until I started seeing his family's posts again. They began tagging me. They said really hurtful things in the posts regarding my abortion. The posts got more personal and hurtful each time. I tried my best to ignore them because I knew that he would just appear on my doorstep soon, but that's when one of the posts started gaining traction. It went from 30 likes to 300 likes to over 3,000 likes. I had so many people in my DMs spewing hatred towards me without knowing the full story. They sided with my fiancé and said that I was in the wrong for this without talking to him about it first. Some said that I would make a terrible mother, and some were threats from pro-lifers. I felt terrible. The family leaked my home address in the comments of the viral post, and I had people knock on my door and vandalize my house multiple times. I was scared to leave my home. I thought that I could be hurt because of what they'd done. I had someone leave razor blades in my mailbox. I saw some people in the comments even giving out my phone number and the place where I worked. My phone rang off the hook day in and day out. I had to change my phone number, but I was too afraid if someone recognized me out of the house. One day, my boss called my phone and asked about the post. He asked me what was the story behind it and if it was true. I told him my side of the story, and he said he wanted to see me in his office the next day. This shook me to my core. Chase ruined my life. When I went to work the next morning, no one bothered me, thankfully, and I landed in the seat across from my boss. We had a long conversation, and I basically begged to keep my job. Once he heard my pleas, he agreed that I would be on probation for 90 days and that I could keep my job. As I was returning home, I saw Chase in my driveway. It took everything in me not to run him over. He had chocolate and flowers waiting for me as I got out of the car. I bumped past him and walked into the house. He followed me and led with apologies. I told him that he'd gone way too far and that if he didn't leave in the next 30 seconds, I was going to call the police. He was upset and said that I didn't deserve him anyway. He talked about all the other women who were dying to have a chance with him and how I was throwing away all of the good times we shared. I knew this trick all too well and stood my ground. I slammed the door in his face and called the cops. He banged at my door and yelled threats for what felt like forever. When they came, I told them everything about the cyberbullying and his trespassing, and they arrested him. I was proud of myself for standing up for myself and not letting this man negatively affect my well-being while he gave me crumbs of his love at a time. It wasn't until then that I realized how poorly he treated me. I had his family come get his clothes, and they were pissed. They called me names, and I told them if they kept it up, I would press charges on them too. They hushed their mouths quickly and left. I ended up selling the house so that people online couldn't know where I lived anymore and moved in with my best friend Chelsea. Chelsea helped me heal, and things started to look up from there. With the help of my loved ones, I was able to regain my confidence that was deteriorating slowly while I was with Chase. Eventually, I got promoted at my job and was making more than enough money to take care of myself, and I started taking myself on more vacations with my friends and family. Initially, I was upset with myself for wasting years with Chase and for constantly disrespecting myself for staying with him, but through prayer and therapy, I learned to pour the love that I was pouring into everyone else's glass into my own.